It's Nancy Ungerman. It's April 23rd, and I'm talking to him in his office, and the videographer is Ruth Andrus. And hello.
Hello.
Tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And
Came to Dallas when I was about 3 years old, two and a half years old.
So you're practically a native. What made your parents come to Dallas?
I'm not sure. I guess my father came here and opened up a fruit stand on Jefferson Boulevard. I don't know why he moved. Never asked him why they moved. Unfortunately, we don't ask our parents enough questions until we realize.
So true.
Unfortunately, when they're gone. Just didn't ask enough questions.
Yeah. Were your parents?
My father was born in Russia. Just like you read about, the oldest son came first, and then the next, then he made enough money to send for the next son, and then the next son, and my father was the third to come over. And then they had enough money to bring one of the sisters over. And then it kind of faded, and he kept up with them in Russia until the war started, and then after the war he lost contact with all of them. So we don't know what happened to
the war, World War II.
Yes,
yeah.
my father was the third son to come over here, and he went to northern Wisconsin and started, what I understand, he told me, started trapping animals, and it just didn't work out. He moved to Milwaukee, in which he was selling fruit and vegetables out of a pickup truck in the back, on the street, like a street vendor. And that's where he met my mother. My mother walked by there every day. She worked at a place in Milwaukee called Chase Bag. You ever hear of Chase Bag, Ruth?
Chase Bag.
Huh? Okay. What are you laughing for? Okay.
Because I was born in Milwaukee, but we're not going there.
Okay.
Afterwards.
No, I understand. And that's how he met my mother. And lived a little time in Milwaukee. And then we moved to Dallas.
What year?
All that I know is before I went to high school, we moved 8 times. So I lived in 8 different places before I went to high school.
In Dallas.
In Dallas.
And you were 3 years old. The date.
About 3 years old. Yes, about 3.
What would the date have been?
Don't know. Probably, I was born in 36, so we moved here before the war. So probably moved before, started in 41, December. So we were here then. I know that.
The sister too?
No, I have 2 older sisters. I have one sister who's 80 and the other sister who's 77 and a half. My 2 sisters married 2 brothers here.
What are their names?
Mopsik, M-O-P-S-I-K. One's divorced, and the other one, the other one's married. It's okay. They have children, lovely family.
Mopsik, what's the first name of your brother?
You mean my sisters? The oldest
Your
sister is Cecilia, C-C-L-I-A, and the second one is Dolores, and I'm the baby. And
So you're the one that's carrying on the name. Right?
well, yes, plus our grandchildren.
How many of them?
We have 9 grandchildren, 7 boys and 2 girls.
Oh, lots of people
And
to carry on the name.
we have 7 boys that and of our grandchildren, the youngest is 6, and the oldest will be 22.
Tell me your children's names.
Our oldest son is Richard. The 3 boys went to St. Mark's for 12 years, and the oldest son then went to the University of Pennsylvania, And our twin boys went to the University of Texas, and they're both attorneys, practicing attorneys in Dallas.
So, and you're an attorney?
No, I am not an
Oh,
attorney.
okay.
I'm not an attorney at all. Not an attorney. I got into real estate business by building. My wife and I built a home for ourselves on North Haven. The lot and the house cost $19,000. Bought a lot for like $5,000 or $6,000. Built a house for like $14,000-15,000. Right off of St. Jude's. You know, when you could buy lots, and building cost was like $6 a foot. So we built a 1,900-foot home, and then I sold the home. We sold the home because somebody came along and offered us a big profit at the time. And we then built a home, then we bought the lot across the street, because with that profit we could add another bedroom. That was only a 3-bedroom home. So we bought the lot across the street, and we built a home that had 4 bedrooms. And halfway through, here comes, do you remember a doctor here by the name of David Fader? Okay, David Fader bought the home with his wife and made a little money on that. And then down the street, they had the last lot left on North Haven, and we bought that. And we sold that, and I decided that was a lot better money in that than what I was doing. I was in the used car business. Shared a lot on Ross Avenue with someone. The rent, my rent was $62.50 a month. The lot was $125, and I took half of it. And you really didn't need any money to go in the used car business. You could buy junk cars at the time for, believe it or not, for $125. So, you know, right now, tires cost more than that. You know, tires cost more.
Well, if your first house altogether came to $19,000.
That's all it cost.
Well, it was still one of the finer houses.
It's still there, and it looks wonderful. Though it was one lot away from St. Jude's, and the northwest corner of St. Jude's and North Haven was a very large lot, and it was subsequent to that it was subdivided.
I want to backtrack a little bit.
Okay, absolutely.
Tell me where you lived when you first came to Dallas, and the first school.
When
that
we
you went
first came to Dallas, we lived off of Matilda on 2 streets. One Morningside and one Goodwin. Goodwin was a duplex, and we lived there. And then, of course, my parents were very concerned about us growing up in a Jewish environment. And there weren't too many Jewish people living off of Matilda. So they moved to South Dallas. And South Dallas was an unusual place because there was a train track going through the middle of South Dallas. Now, South Dallas was at the time south of City Hall. When you talk about South Dallas now, they include Oak Cliff. But South Dallas was really just south of City Hall, between the Trinity and Fair Park. And that's where we lived. And there was a train track going through there. We lived on South Boulevard, 2 houses down from the train track. And and kind of across the street from Temple Emmanuel. And we could always hear the train running. And my memories of the train track was a big anthill with red ants. And you'd go by there and look, and you know, as a kid. And went to grade school. School is not there anymore, called Colonial Hill. In fact, Saturday night we went out with some friends of ours, all grew up in Dallas, and Ethel Zale now, her maiden name Ethel Silvergold. She went to Colonial, and a lot of Jewish people went to Colonial, and then we moved on the other side of the tracks
Which was still South Dallas?
which was, no, the other side of the tracks. The tracks ran north and south.
Uh-huh, I
South
see.
Boulevard ran east and west. And there was really an area on South Boulevard that if you lived on the west side of the tracks was less affluent than living on the east side of the tracks. There were some parents who would not let their daughters date a Jewish boy on the other side of the tracks.
Wrong side of the
And
tracks.
that is right. Ruth, have you ever heard that? Okay. And then I went to a school by the name of John Henry Brown, where we lived on South Boulevard. It was a great place to grow up.
At this point, how old were you?
Well, I was probably around. School was 6, so I started at 6. I think my mother fibbed a little on my age because you had to be 6 by September the 1st. I'm not so sure I was 6 when I started. So
She wanted you out of the house.
yes, well, my mother worked, and one less person at home. You did what you had to do to get by at the time. My parents were not any different than a lot of parents. My father was in a grocery business. He left very early. He left probably 4:30. I never saw my father. He left around 4:30 in the morning. Went, had a pickup. Went to the farmer's market. Bought fruit and vegetables. And my mother fed us in the morning, and took a streetcar to the store. And my oldest sister gave us supper, if she could catch me, whenever. And my parents closed the store and probably came home around 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night after they closed the store. So it's no different. There are a lot of, we weren't isolated, and we were not unique. There were so many Jewish families who both parents worked for their children.
Oh, yes.
And that they wanted the best for their children, what they could afford.
You might not have been unique, but you were all amazing to be able to do that.
Well,
Amazing.
and it's I wouldn't trade South Dallas bringing up for anything. In fact, we were talking Saturday night, Ethel and myself, that it was absolutely amazing growing up in South Dallas. You knew everybody. You knew everyone there. I mean, you knew everyone. And we had a place we played baseball called The Lot, L-O-T. It was next door to the Beck, where the Becks lived. Do you remember the Becks? No.
Oh, yes.
Okay. You remember the
Well,
Becks?
I know that Jay.
Oh, Jay, yes. And that's right, we live next door there. In fact, I see Jay all the time because the fellows, or people who grew up in South Dallas, myself and another fellow started about 20-something years ago. We meet the last Friday of every month at Luby's. There's around 20 of us who show up. We get together, just the ones who grew up in South Dallas, and what do? We sit around and tell lies. That's exactly what we do. And let me tell you, there's all types. There's doctors, lawyers, merchant, chiefs, and people who've been to jail. And there's
People who sent people to jail, Freddie
no
Time.
people who've been to jail. And unfortunately, that person has passed away. And there's all types of people who come there. They're great. We grew up together. I wouldn't trade that for anything. You learn to hustle on the street. Believe me, you learn to hustle.
Hustle what?
You learn to make a living. You learn street smart. Growing up in South Dallas.
What did you do on the street? Hustle. What did you hustle?
Well, first I did. We had a A&P and a Safeway there, and what did I do? I went there and asked people if I could carry their groceries home. they'd give 10 or 15 cents for, if you carry, I targeted little old ladies and asked them, can I carry your groceries home? Little boy, and how much do you charge? Whatever you want to do. So, they weren't exactly the greatest tippers, but, then, we went to there were two movie houses there, the White and the old Forest Theater. And you would go in Saturday morning. It was for a child, it was 9 cents. You stayed there, you got out in the afternoon, and it was so sunny, you couldn't keep your eyes open. And they also had, during the war there, they had where you could buy, they had contests for savings stamps. You're too young. Do you know what a savings stamp was? I still have a couple of my books. Savings stamps is a paper book you got during the war to help for the bond drive. You fill them with stamps that you bought for $0.25. And when you filled it up, you could trade it in for a war bond. And of course, I never filled it up because I never had that much money. Popcorn was a nickel. There was a man at the old White Theater by the name of Pop. And if you were nice to him, he would fill up your bag with popcorn. My wife lived right across the street from me. Her maiden name was Black. She lived across the street, maybe 200 feet to the east. And we went through the first grade together, and that's how I met my wife. And but South Dallas was just a great place to grow up. It was, I wouldn't trade it for anything. People lived in Highland Park. We didn't even know that place existed. We went to a movie and we saw someone skiing in a movie. We thought that was for kings and queens and princes and princesses, because we didn't know what that was. It was a great place to grow up. Everybody knew each other, and nobody kept their doors locked. No one kept their doors locked. Never afraid of anything growing up in South Dallas. Yes, at Colonial, and more so at Colonial Hill, which was a little bit less affluent school than Brown. Yes, you were Jewish, and I got in a lot of fights. There's no question. There's a place behind Colonial School where an alley tees in there, and that's where we got in fights there, and I got in plenty of fights there. So that's
just for being Jewish.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. Absolutely. Colonial Hill did not have the populace of Brown in Jewish population at Colonial Hill. It was a little bit lesser, closer to Lamar Street, and got the people who were a little less income earning than the people who lived on the east side of the tracks. But a great area. I wouldn't trade it for area. I grew up. Who was my best friend there? Joe Rubinette. Do you remember the name Rubinette, don't you? Was a character. I still talk to him. He's retired. Of all people, here's a fella who we didn't know what to think of Joe. He was just great. All the Rubinettes always had a smile on their face. Always. Did you ever meet any of them? Huh?
Pardon me?
Did you ever meet any of the Rubinettes?
Oh, one
Always had a
best
smile.
friend of Dave's was the name the names.
Abe. Kenneth. Norman.
Kenneth.
Always had a smile on their face. Always had a smile on their face. And he grew up and went to college, and taught at Long Beach, Long Island High School Spanish for 32 years. He is retired, married a librarian, not a Jewish lady. He would never tell his mother he was married to her, because he told me it would break her heart. So he never told her he was married, and he told me that. And still, I love South Dallas. I thought it was just a great place to grow up. Then I graduated from Hillcrest High School. But how did I make money? My first really trying, with Joe and several other people, I scalped tickets at football games and made fairly good money. It was a way to make, for a 12, 13-year-old boy to make $150. That was a tremendous amount of money. And what else did I do? I ran the fireworks stand on the corner of Commerce and Industrial Boulevard on the northwest corner where the jailhouse. There was a fireworks stand because that was the outside of city limits. I got paid $5 a day for that, and I worked there one summer during the holidays, and he paid an extra $5 if you spent the night over there. And I spent the night over there. I don't remember if it was a cot or the floor or anything, because he didn't want to pack up and move everything. So and I used to scalp tickets in front of the Baker and did Office Hotel during Texas OU weekend, myself and Joe. Joe and I also went on Ackert Street toward Ross Avenue, where there was a novelty company, and you could buy these wind-up toys. And we stood in front of the Baker Hotel toward the east side, and nobody ever ran us off, but we would sell these walking people for like 65 cents. We made about $0.25 a piece on them. We'd have them walking on the sidewalk. It was great. We sold pennants there. And people or policemen never shoot us away. And we made some dollars there. And that was, yes.
Tell me, so you moved, when did you move to North Dallas, so to speak?
We moved to North Dallas, I'm guessing, I'm guessing about when I was around 1950. I'm guessing 50. We lived in
So by that time you're about
14, 15
yeah.
years old. Learned how to drive. Always took my father's car when he didn't know about it. My father bought we bought our first car, our family had the first car in 1950. That's when we had the first car, because my father had a pickup truck. And I learned how to hot wire the car, and I took the car. And but that was when you were able to get a driver's license at 14, if you showed a hardship. And of course, it wasn't always truthful stories we told the people. And who did you go to? Who made that decision? But Kaplan, who had the printing company.
Not Sherman.
No, not Sherman. His name was, I forgot his name. Great man. His daughter, he had two girls and a boy. One daughter married a Levy fella here, and I forgot his name. Passed away very, very young of cancer, and she was like 95 when she passed away. I just can't think of his name. But he owned a printing company on Ackert Street, and that was it. You know, everybody grew up in South Dallas can name the street that they live in, almost every resident.
And it sounds like you have the same friends as you grew
No,
up with.
no, you know, those were friends that I had growing up. But when you move, you get acquainted with new friends. You know, your high school friends and people you grow up with, I think, are your friends for life. You know, they're your friend. You just don't forget about those people. And unfortunately, some have passed away. Some have been in a terrible automobile accident. Some have been, you know, just went to funeral 10 days ago, a fellow I grew up with, even though he was a couple years older than I was. And great place to grow up, as I keep repeating myself.
Name some of the first names and last names of the people from high school or the few from South Dallas that you're still in touch with.
Well, there's so many of them. I mean, Edwin Siegel, Freddie Time, Tommy Odo. Do you know Tommy Odo? Tommy Odo is not Jewish. He's an Italian fellow, but he grew up with us. And Tommy's from an old Italian family in Dallas, and he's in the real estate business now, very successful. Tommy Odo, the Friedman boys, Arthur, Nathan, Dennis, and Tommy Spiegel, Peter Fonberg, who's a partner of mine in some properties, and I could go on, Ethel Silvergold,
Yeah.
and you know, yes, we still see each other.
Yeah, that's great. So, after high school, what did you do? Did you go to college? And
No,
where?
I did not. It just was. I just barely got out of high school. More interested in cars, and worked at various jobs, and then I went to the Army on our side. And,
Well, thank you.
went to the Army, took basic training at a place called Fort Chaffee, Camp Chaffee, which is right outside of Fort Smith.
And you're about 20 at this age.
I was about 19 or 20, yes. And then the Army sent me to Brooke Hospital in San Antonio, and I was a medic, what we called a pill pusher. So I took medical training at Fort Sam Houston, and my wife went to the University of Texas, so I would sneak off sometimes over the weekend and go visit my wife. And then I got out of the Army. I was still in the used car. I was starting the car business, and made a living. And my wife worked. She graduated University of Texas in '59, and first was offered a job as a dietitian for Methodist Hospital. But the first job was, she had to be there at 11 o'clock at night. And we were just married, and it really wasn't for us. But then she got a job for working at White Motor Company on Irving Street. And then she got a job working for CST Collection Agency, run by Stanley Fagan.
My cousin.
Okay. She worked for, called CST, and she worked for him for 2 or 3 years, and I think she was making about $250, $275 a month. And we had our first child, and we lived at the Prestonville Apartments on Thackeray and Northwest Highway. The rent was $85 a month, and it was $250 more in the summertime if you wanted an air conditioning unit. So it was $87.50 for Prestonville Apartments. You probably don't know.
Yes, I do.
The assisted living is there now, and I forgot the name. Yes. Why did we forget our name? Is it Halfzimers? Not just is. It's called the Edgemere.
Oh.
The Edgemere's there. The Edgemere's there. That's not. But it used to be an apartment complex that was built right after the war started. For the shortage, it was built in 1945, and we moved in. We got married in '59. So apartments were only 15 years old. That was pretty good. And that was where we lived.
Once more, give your wife. Let me
Rita,
here, Rita.
Rita, her maiden name is Black, B-L-A-T-T. She has a sister by the name of Marilyn.
Rita, okay.
And Marilyn married their lovely couple, married a fellow from Corpus Christi, or Galveston, I forgot. Have two daughters. One is married to Dr. Mark Fleschler here, and the other one lives in New Orleans.
So you're a pretty famous man in this part of the world. Well, you are. Tell us what evolved after you got out of the army. Well, then you got married, and then you were in.
I was in the used car
business?
business, and there was a friend of mine who I grew up with. Never forget. His name was Buddy Sussman. Came to see me, and he said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "You need to get out of this business." And he talked me into leaving the car business. And I was extremely, extremely lucky that before that we had gotten married, and we had a little money. We got some persons, and we had $2,500, and it was there was a lot for sale on Ross Avenue. I figured I would getting to have my own property. So the gentleman wanted to sell it. He was willing to carry the note for $5,000 down, but I only had $2,500. I talked him into selling it to me for $2,500 down and $2,500 in a year. I had no idea where I was going to get that $2,500 in a year. No sooner had I bought it, a couple of weeks later, Mike Doran calls me from Doran Chevrolet. He wanted to lease the lot. He said I was looking at it and I was going to make a deal, but you just beat me to it, and I leased it to him for $600. I don't even know how for $617. I mean $675 a month. And leased it to him, and somebody said, you know, you can take that lease and go to Southland Life Insurance Company and borrow it on the lease you got. So I went there and I borrowed enough money to get my $2,500 back and pay off the mortgage on it. And my payments were $617.65, and I made enough. So I said, and then when Buddy Sussman came, I said, this car business is not for me. So I started, I wanted to get into the real estate business. And I figured, hey, I could, this looks wonderful, but it, you know, it might look wonderful, but there's a lot of problems to it. So I started going around door to door, absolutely door to door, and off Ross Avenue, knocking on every door and asking if they wanted to sell their property. And that's how I got started. And
Door to door, what shops were there?
no, there were no shops. They were
Just homes.
residential properties, and some had some little shops. You know, you're not from Dallas, but a lot of people had a store, and they lived in the back. You know, there's still some of those structures off of Columbia where you could go and see where there was an old grocery store or a dry goods store, and you'd go in the back and you'd see the house in the back. You know, just a structure. And they're still around in Dallas off of Columbia and East Dallas. They're still there. Dallas has got some great history, and if you like it. But unfortunately, that doesn't exist today. There's some schools that don't even teach history anymore. That's just amazing. So,
Progressing on your real estate.
ma'am,
So.
that's how I got started in the real estate business, and then I started building homes. When I built that first home, then I started building homes, and started building homes west of, right around Welch Road. The lots around Hockaday School, the lots were around $6,000. And I could not get financing. So I went to Dallas North Lumber, and the man said, if you buy the lumber from us, I'll give you the financing. And that's how a lot of homes all over the country, all over the United States, were built in the 20s, 30s, 40s. The lumber company, as long as they sold all the material, you gave them a deed of trust, which is a mortgage, and they finance it for you. So I started doing that.
By now we're in the 70s.
No, I was in the early 60s.
60s?
Yeah, late 59 or 60. And I started building homes, and I was selling homes in the Hockaday area for $37,000 and still making $3,000 on them. And then apartment house lot came up off of Webb's Chapel on a street by the name of Hidalgo. And I got that and a couple of partners, and we bought the lot, and that's when you can get 100% financing. But I kept the apartments and operated them, and I sold all of the apartments at one time. It was a big decision. And then I moved over here on Meadow Road and built a lot of units over there on Meadow Road on the west side of Central Expressway. And I sold all the units to one company, and I kept one unit close to Henderson Knox, and sold them out. And then I started buying small little retail sites, but I never sold them and kept all of them. And I sold my last multifamily unit in about 5 years ago, which would be 2007. No, probably 2008 or 9. No, probably 2008, sold them. And the money I got from the last unit that I had, I paid off all my debt that I had on all of my properties. And that's what I still do, still building, and still as an equity partner in some projects, and that's what I do. Got a lovely family, lovely wife, great wife. The only thing about her, when we got married, she weighed 99 pounds, and she after 3 years, she still weighs 99 pounds. Hasn't gained a pound. Hadn't gained a pound.
So you were seriously dating since you all were 15 years
I dated, yes, and there was a couple of other ladies I dated and still see them, but believe me, I picked the greatest one. She is just great. She is just a great gal.
You've had some extracurricular,
Don't
I
tell
think
me.
you could call it professions. Tell us a little bit about what
That's
you've done to the
curricular.
city.
Well, I hope there's not in married life. I know what you mean. I got involved. I got involved probably 20 years ago. Somebody asked me to sit on one of the commissions, and I did. I got involved in it.
Which commission?
The very first one was the Board of Adjustment, and that was probably 25 years ago. And then my predecessor, her name was Donna Bloomer, one of the most people of integrity I've ever met. She was my predecessor on the city council. She asked me to sit on the city plan commission, and I did. And then with the work on the city plan commission and working out the North Park expansion, that was, I was able to work that out with both sides. And it came down to a Thursday night meeting. We weren't going to work it out. I told them, we better work it out, or I'm going to do this, this, and this. Able to work it out, and Donna Bloomer asked me and my wife if I would consider running for city council. And I talked to my wife and my kids, and decided to run. Had the Dallas Morning News never, editorial page when they recommend, they'll say who they recommend, then they'll say, well, Joe Blow, he's not ready, or he's got this, or they never even mention my name, because the mayor at the time, in my opinion, just did not want another conservative person from District 13.
The mayor
So-
was?
The mayor at the time was Ron Kirk, who anyhow, it was my competition was a fellow named Jim Graham. He was president of the park board, and he brought the World Soccer team to Dallas. And Reed and I were very active in, we ran one of the polling places for 6 or 7 years. And the first election I ever had was for election judge in our district, which had around 1,600 voting. And I got 89% of the vote, which is absolutely unheard of. And then Donna asked me to run for city council, and I did. And Jim Graham, it was a hard-fought campaign. I had no idea going into that Saturday night who was going to win. Had absolutely no idea. I worked my fanny off. We had 37 or 38 precincts. I won all but 2 of the precincts. One I lost by 1 vote. I lost Melshire Estates by 1 vote. So when you read in the paper that elections are won and lost by 1 vote, it happened to me. I won 30. We had 39 precincts. I won 37 out of 39 precincts, but I lost Melshire Estates by 1 vote. It was unbelievable. And it was, had no idea going in there. I was even campaigning, went out to a couple of the voting places. And what I think really helped is I had around 29 or 30 or 33 people who gave little cocktail parties for me, which we invited. You'd send out 500 invitations and you'd get 30 people there. But the word spreads. I put out 1,600 signs. 1,600 signs. Spent $127,000. And contributions came in, and in fact, I have a letter here somewhere for a man who wrote me a letter, and he said, I want to give you $50, but I want to give it to you $10 a month.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I still have the letter here. Never forgot that. And it was, I did win. I got 59% of the vote. Kirk was the very first person who called me. Paper never even mentioned my name. But I was the very, very first one that Ron Kirk called Sunday morning about 6:30. And I get up very, very early. And he said, I want to congratulate you. Let me tell you about Ron Kirk. He never returned a telephone call in office. He would immediately leave his office and come to your office. He was unbelievable. He wanted to see you face to face. I thought that was great. I served under 4 mayors. Served under 4 mayors in the city of Dallas. I had 8 years there. My last, I ran unopposed all the other times, and have great people constituency, great area. District 13 is a great area from Preston Center, Northwest Highway, north to LBJ, and from Preston Road or Hillcrest westward to Webb's Chapel. Great great area. And as I said, it won almost 60% of the vote. And at the time, more people cast their votes when I ran, I think, than all the other council places put together. It was, as I said, we didn't know until Saturday night who was going to win.
And the newspapers never,
Well,
no,
let me tell you, I have in my office, yes, newspapers, editorials numbers change, but they did write an article about me when I left. And when you go out, you'll see it in the hallway. Every Thanksgiving, I don't know if you know, but the editorial staff at Dallas Morning News does a toast to certain. So they did a toast to me, and they very sorry that I left office. They're about the money I saved there, and you'll see it on your way out. I have it on the wall. I thought it was just a very great editorial they wrote. And when I left, I had around $170,000 left in my campaign. And I sent out 1,033 checks back. The Dallas Morning News wrote it up. I sent all the money I had left to, I kept track on everything, so I sent out 1,033 checks with refunds. People got probably around 45% or 50% of what they gave me. I sent checks out. Some of the checks I got back, they had moved, can't find. Sent one to one of the big banks in Dallas. They sent it back. They said, we can't find, we gave you money, so we're sending it back to you. So I ended up with about $20,000, and I figured, who in the world should I give it to you? So I wanted to, should I give it to my synagogue, which would not be right thing to do with people who contribute. So I ended up giving it to a great organization. I gave it to Vogel Alcove because they treat everybody, and that's who I gave the funds to. A fellow named Alan Gold came to the office and I gave him a check. It's amazing. Some people moved, no forwarding address, but the biggest one was one from a bank who they didn't take it. They sent it back.
Showed a lot of integrity on both sides.
Yeah, great write-up in the Dallas Morning News. They couldn't believe it, and they sent it back. And they sent it back. They wrote an editorial because of the 5 or 6 people who just got convicted for malfeasance, for taking bribes in office in Dallas City Council. And they wrote an article that it's great that I gave money and what has happened at City Hall. And one of the, it's a shame what happened at City Hall. One man got 18 years for trying to build some developers out of money. He did a wrong thing. Terrible.
This is fascinating. I want to jump back
Okay, go
and
ahead.
hear about your Jewish education and allegiance from the very beginning, really, what you belong to.
I was solicited by Fred Teicher in 1959. Excuse me. I was solicited by Fred Teicher, building a park project. I don't even know what I gave, but I got interested in that. Then started working, campaigning at the Jewish Federation of Greater Dallas, and then I was president of Jewish Family Service. and then National Vice Chairman of United Jewish Appeal Young Leadership Cabinet, and was on the board of the United Jewish Appeal. And, you know, United Jewish Appeal doesn't exist anymore. Been to Israel 19 times, was captured with another fellow by the name of Elliot Zolan, who worked for United Jewish Appeal, by the Jordanian army. We had a Friday afternoon off. We were through soliciting. I was always in charge of solicitation. And we were captured by the Jordanian army, trying to cross over the Allenby Bridge and taken to the army post under guard. And that's when there were not diplomatic relations. And we were sent back to Israel, and my passport is stamped. The port of entry is Allenby Bridge. Got involved in Jewish, always all kinds of activities with the Jewish Federation, Jewish Family Service, and got involved in Sheriff Israel, and my father was on a board, and I was elected president 10 or 12 years ago, served as president of our congregation, and our son was president up to a couple of years ago, and one of our sons now president of the Jewish Federation of Greater Dallas.
His name?
Jeffrey Rasansky. Jeff is the president.
And your other son's name?
His twin is they're both attorneys, practicing attorney. Our oldest boy went to school in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, and he's in a business I don't know is a computer business. You don't see a computer here. I don't even have, but I do have a Redberry. I don't have a Blackberry. I have a Redberry.
And I haven't seen a Redberry.
I've had it all through the city council. They all know what my Redberry is. This is my Redberry right here.
Okay.
This is my Redberry here.
Show it to the office,
This is my Redberry here. All my appointments, I have my Redberry that I have used for years. For years, I can go back years. I can go back years and show you all these are filled with appointments in the past.
Wonderful.
All that.
Oh.
And this, let me tell you, I have never taken my cell phone out of my car. I keep it in my car. I call my office every 15 minutes. But I don't have a computer. I go home and I read a tremendous amount. And I collect old cars. I can tear one of my car engines down and put it together within 0.003 of an inch, but I don't know how to use a computer, and I don't want to. We get along. The girls work for me have computers. You're probably up at till 12 o'clock at night on your computer. So are you on these chat shows, aren't you? Yes, you are.
Well, no, I play this game that I'm addicted to.
Yeah, well, I have better things. I have not better things to, because that's what you like.
Yeah.
I like to read. I only read history. I like to read, and I do work on my cars a lot.
What book are you
I was
reading
in
now?
my garages. I sleep about 3.5 to 4 hours a night. Everybody who knows me, I that way for 40 years. I was in my garage this morning around 4:30 working on one of my cars. And that's it.
Where do you live now?
Live on a street by the name of Ursula.
Oh.
We have a 3-car attached garage and then a 15-car garage in the back, and it's full.
Is there any particular car that you like?
There's a couple, but that's something else.
Who's influencing your
I know, yeah.
Go to shows with the cars when I'm invited, and sometimes take the cars when I'm invited to shows overseas.
Oh.
So, yes.
Who are your role models, over the years?
My father was, and my mother. They're hard working people. Anybody in the grocery business worked hard. They were. My mother-in-law was was a great person. And my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was a wonderful person. There's only one name for her, one letter for her, and that's a 4-letter word. She was just a wonderful, well not, I can't, but she was just great.
Mm.
She was just, she was a great, lost my mind, there's a 4-letter word I always called her, and great, that has none, but there's a,
Love.
yeah, maybe it was love, but she was a great person. She was a great person.
As far as
Politically,
kindness.
no, I don't have any
Mhm.
role model
Mhm.
particularly, and I'm extremely conservative. And as I said, been to Israel 19 times. Used to be vice chairman of the National Cash Collection Committee for United Jewish Appeal, and was elected 4 times in the Dallas City Council. Papers finally turned around, as I said, and they always called me. And I still have several council members who always call me now, every once in a while.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
This has been a wonderful interview.
Well, I don't know about that.
And
Yes, I do.
I don't know about